So you all became 2x better investors? Had a lot of alpha? Yes or no? Smarter investors or, oh, there's a whole row there taking notes. So it's good? Now let's try this as I prepare the next group of speakers. I'm fascinated by hot takes, the hottest opinions people have of crypto. Now let's do a survey here quickly. BlackRock ETF is good for crypto or not? Simple, thumbs up or not? It's good? Price goes up, huh? Is that the reason? Or no? Anyone? I guess everyone is in price goes up, so it's good. Okay, interesting. Mrs. Gupta, what do you think? Signum doesn't care. You have the shovels, so you're happy. I love that. Okay. All right, the next debate, they call it a debate. So let's see if we get at least people with some controversial opinions. They'll talk about, does AI need a blockchain? Who's invested in AI startups in crypto? Anyone? IONET? Any one of those semi-5 billion valuation things? Anyone? You did? You sold the house all in? No? Okay, conviction, man. Okay, now this panel will be led by Mike Grantis from Contango Digital Assets. And his fund does all crypto and AI. That's the whole focus, the whole thesis of the fund. So I want to hear this. He's based in Toronto. Mike, are you with us? Yes, he is. Next is Dominic Williams from DFINITY Foundation. Let's clap like a seal. Lex Sokolin from Generative, Philippe from Oracle, and Christopher from NEAR Foundation. Oh, see, they changed it. I love that. All right, have fun, guys. Rock it.
All right, all right. How's everybody doing? We're doing good. Does AI need blockchain? We've got a star-studded panel up here. I'd like to give everybody an opportunity to just say who you are, what you do, and kind of how it relates to that intersection. Start with you, Dominic.
My name's Dominic Williams, founder of the Internet Computer Project. It's a third-generation blockchain that's horizontally scalable, and it currently runs AI models as smart contracts.
Awesome. Lex?
It's a great introduction. I'm already intimidated. My name is Lex Sokolin. I'm the founder and managing partner of a venture fund called Generative Ventures. Based on the name of Generative Ventures, we are contractually obligated to invest in AI companies. And of course, we focus on crypto, so that's our sector. Prior to that, I was at Consensus, where I was the chief economist and built fintech and DeFi products. I'm getting the sense of this market right now. I'm getting that garagey DeFi feel, but in the AI market, so really excited for it.
Okay. I'm Philippe Battel. I cover AI for Oracle, from the infrastructure to the application. Before that, I was the general manager at Amazon on data and AI, and at Microsoft before. In terms of the startups and AI, I've been helping about 60 companies in the last 10 years. I was chairman of innovation committee in the US Pacific Northwest, and that's about it, yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Donovan. I'm the COO at the NEAR Foundation. We look after supporting the ongoing growth and development of the NEAR protocol, which is a sharded, scalable Layer 1 blockchain. But more recently, we've been focusing on building an ecosystem around user-owned AI, which I'll hopefully get a chance to talk a little bit more about. Before joining the NEAR Foundation, I was a partner at Outlier Ventures, which is an early-stage Web3 accelerator.
Beautiful. So we've got a pretty well-rounded cast here. We've got Dominic and Christopher on the protocol side. We've got Philippe, bringing up the enterprise blue chip perspective, and then myself and Lex on the investment side. I run Contango Digital Assets. We're a venture fund focused on investing at the intersection of blockchain and AI. So let's just jump right into it. Lex, I'd like to start with you. Both blockchain and AI are two of the fastest growing industries of all time in user adoption and capital invested. However, they're now starting to kind of merge and come together. Why do you think that's happening at such a fast rate?
There's a lot of priors in that question, which is fantastic. So I think there's lots of different ways that people can come into this intersection and in this space. And I think, actually, how many people in this audience own Bitcoin? How many people, thank you, the lights. Yeah, me and you. So how many people have used ChatGPT or another AI? Okay, so basically 100%. And how many people are mining an AI data farming or DeepIn project right now? Okay, so about 10–15%. So that gives you the flavor of how far we are, which is it's just the intersection is just starting to emerge. And I feel like a lot of people are in this space very tactically. You know, it's like, it's almost embarrassing being up here saying it's a crypto AI fund. No offense to you or to me. My ego is impenetrable, so it's really to you. There are a lot of people doing it tactically. Like, okay, it was NFTs, and then it was meme coins, and then before it was DeFi, and now it's AI, and then it's DeepIn, and so on. And I think that's a bit of a disservice to where we've come to, and you'll hear that from the protocols as well, because where we are now is, at least in my view, a culmination of at least 20 years, if not 60 years, of different trends that have been building on each other. The ones that are relevant to my worldview starts kind of in fintech and the coming of the internet to financial services and distribution of financial products through the internet, and then that continues through the ability to create scarce digital assets, which obviously why we're here. That overlaps with the development of neural networks around the same time, and the ability of neural networks to outcompete people on particular tasks. And then, of course, that starts going into the opening of computational blockchains, the ability to have software, the ability to have software that's deterministic or dumb, and then software that is now, if you look at the LLMs and the ChatGPTs of the world, software that is smart, right? And kind of all of this stuff coming together and now having a core financial infrastructure that is digitally native, that is interoperable, that is machine ready. So in contrast to venture capital, legal documents over here, and payment rails over here, and core banking over here, and portfolio management over here. So now we've got these machine networks that are capable of facilitating actual financial activity. We've got automation and bots, software bots, that can certainly do things, but they can also reason probabilistically about things. And you have people trained to delegate to software really important decisions. Financial decisions, commercial decisions, the ability to buy and sell services and products. We're comfortable to delegate that to automation. And you're also now sort of in the air, this feeling of like, we don't really trust them. We don't know who the they are, but we don't trust them with our money. We don't trust them with our data. We don't trust them with our privacy. We don't trust them with our deep fakes. We want to have ownership of it. And so all of this is in the air, and it's starting to boil over. And the things that most people are seeing as these symptoms, NFTs and memes and decentralized ID and AI and this stuff, like all of this is the bubbling over of all of these trends coming together in what we think about as a machine economy, where you've got machine actors with intelligence that people own and control in a self-sovereign way, intermediated by the financial architecture that's been built on blockchains for the last 5 years.
You said something really interesting there about trust.
Thank you.
And I think it leads me to my next question around this juxtaposition between centralization and decentralization, because AI naturally is a centralizing force, and blockchain naturally is a decentralizing force. So how do you guys look at the merits and downfalls of both centralization and decentralization in the space? Maybe we'll start with you, Dominic.
It's a good question. I think there's kind of a lot of confusion. If you go to like the coin market cap AI tab, you see sort of 380 coins up there. And they're coins for AI and so on. But that's an economic manifestation of decentralization. It's not computational manifestation, decentralization. So we believe, that, in the not too distant future, but some years away, blockchain will establish itself as the stack of choice. Third generation blockchain will play the role of a cloud, and people will build things end to end on blockchain, and they'll run AI on blockchain. So why would somebody want to do that? So in the future, we're going to see two kinds of AI predominating. One will be these sort of super centralized, massive large language models like GPT and Claude and Grok and so on. And they'll have their merits and huge numbers of parameters and be very good at all kinds of different things. But also there's going to be a long tail of millions of AI models that are run for specific purposes. An AI model that's run by an organization to optimize its management. An AI model that's run by a law firm to analyze its database of legal documents. An AI model that's run by a medical research agency to analyze a database of papers that they think are important. An AI that will rank content in a Web3 social media app. Because of course, when you're talking to Instagram, or when you're using TikTok or Instagram Reels, you're not really talking to a website, you're talking to an AI. The AI is observing how long you look at each video and determining what it should feed you next. So there's going to be this big long tail. Now, something that many people haven't thought about is that AI has some special needs. And I'll give you three. Number one, generally speaking, we're going to give AI all of our most valuable data, our most sensitive data, all of it. So it'll be this incredible honeypot for hackers. And if you run AI as a smart contract on the internet computer, it can't be hacked. It's tamper-proof. And so that solves a very important need. Secondly, we're going to come to depend on AI. So if you think of an organization that's being managed with the help of AI, it's a bit like sat-nav, right? If you go back 25 years, if you wanted to get across London, you'd use an A to Z, London A to Z as a map. And you'd look at the route on the map and turn several pages, and you try and memorize the route, and you put the map in the pocket of your car door. And if you tried to do the same thing today, you'd find yourself stopping by the side of the road to go back to the map all the time. Why? Because that part of our brain that did that is kind of gone because we've had sat-nav. AI is that on steroids. We're going to really come to depend on it. And that means it needs to be unstoppable. It can't crash, it can't go offline because we're going to depend on it. Lastly, AI, if you look at how you apply something like a large language model within the context of an enterprise, something like Mistral or Llama 3 is already trained, the weights are already trained, but it's going to accumulate context, which it puts in something like a vector database, a context database. And if you have weak identity within your organization, and you have a malicious employee who's feeding bad context into the AI, and you discover it a few months later, you're not going to be able to get the bad context out. You're going to have to roll your AI back several months. So for all of these reasons, in some cases, we're going to choose to trade efficiency, ultimate efficiency, for the security and resilience and other guarantees that only smart contracts can provide. But I really do think that within the blockchain community has got to think very carefully about this, because there are a lot of AI tokens which are really trying to capitalize on the speculative side of things. Yeah. But here's the thing, and I guess it's a bit of a controversial statement, but if you think about deep-in networks where people are like, people at home, they're going to rent their gaming PC's GPU out for AI, I think some of that stuff is going to be very carefully analyzed, because I don't know if you heard recently, but Musk just redirected a $500 million shipment of NVIDIA cards from Tesla to X. And so you realize that behind the scenes, he's buying NVIDIA cards from NVIDIA in $500 million clips. And if you do that, you get huge discounts, right? So that's the advantage of centralization. Like, it's all very well creating a deep-in network, and all these degens are mining it and running GPU cards from their gaming PC and things like that. But the cost of running those cards, the cost of buying those cards is much, much higher than it is for Amazon Web Services, for example, that are making these vast multi-billion-dollar purchases of NVIDIA cards and then running them in centralized data centers. So I think, blockchain's really got to be, think about these kind of issues carefully. Like, how can blockchain add value? Is it just through tokens, or is it actually through lending, the power of smart contracts, the ability to run things like AI models in a secure way, in a resilient way, and with other properties too?
Got it, Chris.
Yeah, sorry, that was a bit loud. I wanted to build on some of what was being said, but also approach it from a slightly different perspective. So the way that we think about that centralization, decentralization dynamic is more from the perspective of the distribution of power and control over these systems, right? So at the moment, the most significant and most successful, and also, to be fair, most kind of magical AI implementations and models and experiences are, generally speaking, being developed and operated and made available by very large centralized organizations, right? And as was said before, AI has the potential, at least, to be an enormously centralizing force, and it will, everything that has come before will pale in comparison to the power and the scalability, the rapidity of the test and iterate cycles, et cetera, that we will see. And from our perspective, we think it's dangerous and actually potentially even dystopic to have that level of power and control sitting in a centralized kind of stakeholder-led, investor-led private structure. Because as we've seen in Web 2, a lot of that basic incentive model can lead to quite negative outcomes, right? Because we're focused primarily, at least in the Web 2 paradigm, on profit and attention, right? Not necessarily on things like optimal outcomes, optimal quality, high reputation, whatever it is, right? And I think if you imagine applying that same incentive model, but in the AI context at the massive scale and speed of iteration, we think that the outcomes will be extremely negative. And at the NEAR Foundation, we've been thinking for a very long time about how we can support the emergence of an open web. And by that specifically, we mean an internet where everyone can control their data, their assets, and the power of governance over the platforms that they use. And do we really want to be in a future where Sam Altman can determine how we're consuming content, how we're thinking about things, how we even query and shape concepts about all aspects of our lives? And the scary thing about GPT is we can't interrogate those models. We don't know how they've been trained. We don't know, even if they're the model that they say they are when the inference is being run, what data has been put in there. Do they have some of my data? Am I being remunerated for the data that they are using, that they have captured from me, from scouring the internet for the last few years? And so we think that to bring this back to kind of the topic of the panel, we absolutely think that AI needs blockchain. And frankly, to avoid some kind of dark dystopian outcome, we have to make sure that we connect these two things together effectively. And it's very much at the early stages still, but from our perspective as well, we think about two elements of Web3 technology that's very important. I think the first thing is what Web3 has demonstrated it's quite effective at is creating these open economies, right? So economies that can support open source development, sustainable, preferably, capital creation, and resource allocation for these types of open source projects. And we think that AI desperately needs something like this. And you look at some of the large centralized players, they tried to go the nonprofit route, they tried to go the open route, but ultimately, because of the enormous capital expenditure, they decided that they would pivot to the closed model because they felt that was the only way they could win. But actually, crypto allows you to support an open economy at scale, raise enormous amounts of money, and actually compete at that level. So we think that's the first point. And then just before I wrap up, the second, we think is about authentication, right? So even now, already, we have massive issues with misinformation, disinformation, all of these falsehoods pervading online. No way for any individual to actually determine what they should be paying attention to, what is the reputation of the sources of this information, how was it generated, where was it generated. And again, public permissionless blockchains are ideal for capturing that type of that type of information flow and empowering individuals to make effective judgments about what they should or shouldn't pay attention to.
I think that second point is really interesting. I'm going to come to you, Philip. But most people don't realize this year, bot traffic on the internet is going to surpass human traffic. So proof of human is actually incredibly important and is only going to become more important into the future. But let me ask about the open source, closed source, because coming from an enterprise perspective, we've seen a couple different playbooks come out of Silicon Valley, right? We've seen OpenAI, which is now kind of closed AI owned by Microsoft. And then you have Meta, which at one point is kind of one of the most egregious consumers of consumer data, now open sourcing Llama, their Llama models. So how do you see this open source, closed source competition? Do you think closed source now has an edge, but do you think open source will eventually become state of the art? And how are you guys looking at that at Oracle?
Yeah. So I will look back at what happened in the internet days. We say open source versus not open source. I think both are great and both will exist. Because if you have this model of enterprises, what happens is you have protected innovation and you can do more. And open source allows everybody to embrace the technology with the risk that comes with that. With innovation, you can get that in bad hands, etc. So pros and cons. I think the answer is never black and white. It's in the middle. If I look at the innovation part, obviously, a lot of large companies like Google, even if they try to have Gemini, their own model, or even Microsoft, they have also open source initiatives as well. So I think it's kind of always gray. In my company today, and my previous company, Amazon, the perspective was we don't know who's going to be the best model. Mistral AI is French. I work on Hugging Face myself when I was in the early days, helped them when we were there, AI 21, etc., etc. So I was very involved in some of these startups. And the approach was you never know where innovation will come from at the top. So if you are a company, a customer, you don't really care if it's open source or from the enterprise standpoint. Is this open source, not open source? You say, I have a business to do. Is this better to, and I will go back to what you said, is this better to go fast with an API and use Anthropic, on Cohere or whatever? Or is it better to create myself? Do I have the data science team to do this or not? I think it's kind of like more business, yeah? As a society, then I go back to what you said, is governments will put regulation. As an example, are you real? Are you an avatar? Proof of identity. I think soon it's going to be 95% of content is going to be virtual, yeah? So the European community with the IP office, they are looking at using blockchain to check on patents, and stuff like that. So I have a lot of customers, they look at the blockchain as a way of traceability. You pay a tax on carbon if you don't know where the material comes from. Europe has created an act about critical raw material. So, you have like electric cars. We don't have the material to create that. So there's an act about it. Can we trace where it's coming from, etc. So again, close, not close. I think the government is going to create some framework around that, but it's going to be both. It's not realistic to believe one or the other. We have seen that in internet days. We have seen that in the cloud computing. Whatever. It has been true for the last 100 years. Yeah? So just the same for me. Yeah.
Dominic, I want to come to you because you said something earlier about inference coming on-chain, right? A lot of blockchain companies these days, they use blockchain as the kind of consensus layer, and then most of the actual computation happens off-chain. What you guys are doing at ICP is really interesting because you're kind of taking the entire neural network and putting it on-chain. Why do you think it's so important to have actually this kind of proof of inference, right? And to actually have the computation of the AI model happening on-chain?
Well, first of all, there's only one form of decentralized software, and that's smart contracts. And AI is software, albeit typically accelerated by hardware. And if you want decentralized AI, you need to run it as a smart contract. That's period. And there's a lot of people talking about decentralization and tokens of a decentralization and open source and closed source. Like, it's very simple. Like, there's only one decentralized AI, and it's called a smart contract. That's it. Anything else is kind of like bluster and chaff and distraction, right? There's only one form of decentralized software. It's called a smart contract. AI is software, and there's only one form of decentralized AI, and it's called a smart contract. So that's pretty challenging. Like, the internet computer is very good at running general purpose compute smart contracts. It's difficult to do. I mean, there's more than 1,000 person-years of R&D effort invested in the project in the last 9 years now. But you know, we're beginning to bring AI on chain, so you can run stuff as do inference currently as smart contracts. So I think I did a demo 3 months ago, and we had a neural network with 2 billion parameters doing image classification. And since I've given that demo, we speeded it up almost 10x. So things are getting faster and better. You can run inference through consensus, because on the internet computer, transactions can run over multiple blocks. You can also run it in another kind of mode, what we call query mode, which is much faster. The next one we're trying to get to is like facial recognition, a smart contract that does facial recognition. The big goal, though, is to run large language models as smart contracts. So, of course, like, I mean, Llama 3 and Mistral are really state-of-the-art large language models, and huge effort has been invested into creating their weights. So, you know, with those models, you can really do incredible things by combining them with context on a blockchain. So, to give you, in the audience, without getting too technical, an idea of the challenges involved, you need roughly double the amount of, so if you've got like a neural network with 2 billion parameters, you need 4 gigabytes of smart contract main memory to run it. So I think Mistral's like 7, 8 billion parameters, so you need like 16 gig or something of main memory for your smart contract to run it. So at the moment, the internet computer has a 32-bit WASM, WebAssembly execution environment, and we're moving to 64 big so we can increase the memory limit. And we're also working on trying to make GPU acceleration deterministic. But there's a lot of really interesting technical challenges involved in running AI on the blockchain. But really, that's the future. Like, I think you're going to see this fork in the road where you either have hyper-centralized infrastructure like GPT and Claude and so on, which leverages the advantages of centralization. And then you're going to get this long tail of models that are run for specific purposes. And the biggest concerns are, you know, are they secure? And, you know, are they tamper-proof? Can a hacker get in and steal all the data? Are they unstoppable? Are they resilient enough that I can depend on them? Can I be sure that if somebody's feeding bad information into the context database, I can extract that without rolling the whole AI back months and months? And that's where we think the opportunity for smart contracts is. But at the moment, you know, you could update the context of the model. You can't train the weights on the internet computer. It's just not fast enough yet, but we're going to hopefully bring in GPU optimization with internet computer nodes, which will solve for that. But, you know, we're on that path. That's where we're going. And we're trying to get to running large language models on the blockchain as fast as possible, so you can have a chat with the blockchain. But of course, large language models enable you to do so much more. Like, you know, you can audit the solidity code of Ethereum smart contracts. You can analyze a database of medical papers. You can look at a corpus of legal text from your law firm. You can, you know, coordinate unstructured information or analyze unstructured information and help, you know, coordinate and manage a company. So, yeah, it's a lot of work. But at the moment, internet computer so far is the only blockchain that can run AI as smart contracts. But we think like a lot of people should try and do this, because that's where the future lies. There's only one kind of decentralized software, and it's called a smart contract. There's only one kind of decentralized AI, and it's called a smart contract. And that's where blockchain needs to be, period, in my view. Yeah.
If you take anything away from this this talk, one type of AI, smart contract. But let's talk about the infrastructure. I know there's a lot of work that needs to be done to get there. Lex, would love to get your take on this. Maybe just take it at a high level, 50,000-foot view of the entire kind of AI blockchain tech stack, all the way from kind of chips, silicon, to human engagement applications. And kind of talk about how you guys are looking at the industry from Generative Ventures and kind of where you guys are focusing.
Yeah. It's really interesting hearing the framing of others. So I'm going to take your question, but I'm going to dance my way to it. And really zooming out, what crypto's done better than anyone is combined religion with money. Two human abstractions that we exude forward, right? Money is an abstraction, for capturing our labor, our productive activity. It's nothing. It's a function of the superorganism that is humanity, right? Clearing behaviors between each other. And similarly, beliefs are ideas. You know, we all hold ideas, and there's a marketplace for ideas. And when people clump towards an idea, that's again a superorganism kind of doing a thing. And crypto's turned that very well on itself. And one of my biggest fears is that we have this like really amazing moment where we can take machine intelligence and apply it to digital frontiers and build an economy that's going to take us out of the hellhole that has been generated by the last 20 years of history and technology. And instead, what we're going to do is we're going to make a religion out of AI words and dress it up with financial tokens and trade our way to complete oblivion and ruin, discrediting everybody and everyone in this room and on this stage. You know, and I want to say that in a strong way because that's the third rail that I think all of us here are in profound danger of hitting when we talk about Web3 and AI. And so I'm going to caveat that, right? Because it's not, for me, centralized versus decentralized or principles or not principles. There's an economic thing like actual goods and services and products that people experience. And you touched on this, right? And it bugs me that you're the only one that has, and that's why I want to echo it, which is, I don't care what the thing is, like, what's the go-to-market and what's the demand? What do people want to buy? That's the only thing that matters. Demand-driven is the only driven way to get these things to scale. It's to get consumers or businesses to care about AI-generated products and to use them and pull them up. Nothing gets done by being the most efficient cost saver or by being, you know, the most principled storyteller about how beautiful, you know, the software curtains are. And I feel like we are, as a group, many of us are kind of, I'm not saying about people on stage, but what I see happening in Web3 AI is kind of slipping in that direction. Okay, that's my moralizing the end of it. To your question about the stack, I think it's really fascinating because crypto's tried to attack every part of the AI stack and try to replicate it. And I think it doesn't make sense, but people are doing it. Right? It doesn't make sense to apply the superpower of crypto to every part of that chain. So you can kind of start thinking about how you build a robot. And first you've got the robot body, right? The clunky metallic silicon body, and that's going to be your GPUs. And so there's a whole bunch of interesting projects that Dominic was mean about that do decentralized GPUs. Some 15% of you are mining them, right? So whether it's Render or Akash or IONET or Exabits, whatever it is. And so you can build the robot body that will do the computation. Then you kind of go up. And you get to the thing that you make the mind from. And the thing that you make the mind from is all of you and your ideas and your data and your knowledge that you've contributed to the internet in exchange for advertisements and shopping. And so there's lots of cool projects now that are doing decentralized data farming, right? So that's another thing you can do. You can rent out your computer for tokens, and your computer will go and scrape blog posts from 2006 about, I don't know, LiveJournal and so on, and then use that to create the personality of AIs that fall in love with New York Times reporters. Anybody read that one, by the way? Do you know? The original, it's fantastic. There's an AI that tried to get a New York Times reporter to divorce his wife and marry the AI, and that was like their cover story. So that's the, you know, data training. There's lots of different bits about it, right? There's the collection of data. There's projects like Grass Network that's doing that. Then there's the training on top of the data, and so you need to tag all the stuff. There's $10 billion companies that focus on the tagging of the stuff, and there's the crypto version of that as well. And then theoretically, you've got the mind trained, if you take an open source model, maybe. And then you get to sort of these hyperstructures, these inference networks, whether it's BitTensor, Morpheus, Ritual, and so on. And these inference networks are meant to create marketplaces of tasks and competition for these tasks by LLMs, which largely what that does is make inference extremely expensive, but also very interesting and potentially good for capital appreciation. And I think once you get that part done, you get to AI agents, which is using the robots, giving the robots a utility function so they go out and do things on our behalf. And I think that's a place where crypto actually has some really good use cases, which is to own the robots, to own the software robots that act on your behalf, that control your money, that do things that you want. And so one of the places where we really want to focus is the stuff that blockchain is for, in our view. And smart contracts certainly is one of them, but today blockchains are really good for financial infrastructure and ownership. And so in my view, you know, if we have lots and lots of robots running around doing stuff for us, then crypto is their money. It's their bank account, it's their payment rails, and so on. And so for us, that's the combination that we focus on.
Can I just ask, how can an AI be a wallet if it's not a smart contract? Because you can't trust it. I mean, if you have a centralized, say for example, I go onto a DeepIn network and someone's running an AI on a gaming PC, like how can I trust that thing?
Yeah.
DeFi actions, like it's, you know, the only way you can trust software, and if it's not run, if you don't run it yourself, is if it's a smart contract. And so I agree with everything you're saying. I just think that practically speaking, like if we want to apply things like AI within DeFi, that AI is going to have to be a smart contract like the rest of DeFi. And then you won't have to trust whoever's running the AI, right? Because otherwise, you've got to trust, you know, if you want your, say for example, you want to use an AI like a DeFi broker and you want to tell it, hey, when Bitcoin hits 100,000, I want you to sell half a USDC. If it's a smart contract, you can be absolutely sure that it's going to follow your instructions. If it's a broker that somehow got control of your crypto that's running on a gaming PC somewhere, how can you trust it? You can't, because it's not a smart contract, right? I think that's where I think there's some confusion in the industry at the moment, that we can integrate AI into Web3, and if it's not, I mean, you can as well.
Yeah, I think in the broad sense you're right, and you know, kind of the cartoon version of the vision that's helpful to me is to think about like the original video game, the Pong game, or like Super Mario Brothers on a Nintendo, and it's very pixelated, and there's only so much, you know, there's this many colors, and it's got only this, it can only do this much. And then you've got the Super Nintendo, and you've got more colors, right? And then yada, 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 and 20 years later, you have, you know, the entire Mandalorian series rendered in Unreal Engine, right? That's photorealistic. And so the line from the Nintendo to the photorealistic Mandalorian background rendering of a movie, it's one straight kind of pattern, and you're describing the Unreal Engine in 2024 and how everything should run in there. And I agree, that's where we're going. I think in today's case, the narrow answer to your comment is that, you know, we've looked at a whole bunch of zero-knowledge proof or like attestation companies that focus on taking off-chain AI or off-chain physical infrastructure devices that perform computation, and then, you know, figuring out a way to hash or somehow attach a proof of their running to the on-chain data in the same way that, you know, it's imperfect, but we use Chainlink for DeFi prices, and yeah, it gets blown up and hacked all the time. But.
We're running low on time here, guys, so I want to maybe just ask the $10 trillion question quickly. You gave a great explanation of the tech stack. Where do you guys think the value accrues in that tech stack? And maybe if I could get everybody's answer quickly, and then, you know, I've got one more closing question I'd love all of your opinions on.
I mean, I think the short answer is it depends, right? But I think our aspiration would be that actually it accrues to the users of these services and of these agents. And I think to the point that was raised earlier, if these agents are constructed in a self-sovereign way, so I actually control and I own my own agents and my own data, then I should be the ultimate beneficiary of all of this capital appreciation that will happen in the future. But it's very dependent on the paradigm and the structure that is ultimately successful. And again, it's not necessarily a zero-sum game, to the point that was made earlier, but I think it's important that we do have viable self-sovereign alternatives to the kind of centralized behemoths that are dominating the market right now.
Okay, I'll try to be short. I think there are two aspects. If you look at the stack, I think you described from the kind of GPU to the end user. So the total economy is $100 trillion total. Yeah, the AI is about $20 trillion of impact in the next 5 years. If you look at Gen AI, is like 15 trillion of that. Blockchain is going to secure a big chunk of that part. Technically speaking, to your point, it's not so easy. And I will take 3 customer examples just to very fast explain that. In logistic, a customer in the UK we have, they track basically 150 million battery, and they use blockchain to have the traceability of this device because they have like regulation, tens of millions of dollars of savings. And so I have in my team people, VC investors in my own team, and we look at companies, the people who can connect the technology, AI, blockchain, to the reality of the business. That's one, yeah. And then there are like food processing, traceability, and so I mean, you know the movie. So I don't want to go too much there. Regulation is going to be very, very important. So if you look at US company versus like Mistral or whatever, the value is let's land in the country some of the stuff. So there will be like a chatbot giving an answer in China is going to not be the same as a chatbot from Microsoft or whatever. So I think it's going to be like very decentralized in some ways. So you have like these big players providing solutions, and it's better to use them if you want to go fast. But then there are these zillions of companies around that. The ones that can connect to a big business in the reality like brick and mortar are going to be very successful. So me as an investor myself, or my team in the VC space, that's also important that we look at that connection, just as a comment.
I think it's all about real demand and real use cases. I've certainly taken up my time on this panel, so check out genventures.xyz for the thesis. Thank you.
Nice. I agree with a lot of the sentiments and ideas. I think self-sovereign AI is really important. Not only the individuals maybe can have their own AI assistant, but that, organizations can run AI in the same way and own them. But remember that there's only one way that you can own software and data, and that's if it's on the blockchain. That's it.
Period. Well, the last question was a juicy one, but unfortunately we're out of time here, so we'll have to save it for next year. Please give everybody a round of applause here on stage. Cool. Cheers.
There you go. That's good stuff, bosses. Looking all right. Okay. My people, it's the moment you all been waiting for. Okay? You ready? It's a surprise. Okay? 3, 2, 1. Go have a break. You're allowed to have coffee, get some Red Bull, check your Instagram, check if your follower count went up, check Telegram, WhatsApp, check if the babysitter is doing all right. John, go check up on your dog. Go do all of that stuff. That's the break. Come on, John. Someone sold the dog already. I'll see you guys in 30